Hello everyone, this is Dr. Purnima and we have reached to the fourth lecture of week 4 module 4 of postmodern art and literature, theory and practice. And today we are going to discuss futuristic trends in postmodernism, and this lecture is on posthumanism in fiction and films. So, when we are talking about posthumanism, we have already discussed a bit of posthumanism, and we understand why there is this development of posthumanism. So, beyond humanism, again, when we are looking at the meaning of the term post and humanism, so it is beyond humanity or beyond humanism. So, what is beyond that? So, it is a world that is slowly shifting from anthropocentrism. So, earlier in the modern age with new technologies and scientific inventions, it was believed that man is slowly becoming the center of the world. And all the theories, especially the Marxist theories and even biblical references, were seeing that the world was created for man and it was for the consumption of man. So there was a basic fault in this belief system. So, this basic fault in this belief system that man is at the center of the world or the center of the universe and everything revolves around the world somehow was exclusionist, and it was not talking about other species. And for the development and for the world to sustain itself, all the species are equally important. So, such questions were also coming up. Ecological concerns were left out of Marxist readings. So, the new Marxist scholars themselves, they started critiquing Marxist worldview, and they thought that the world is not just for consumption's sake, but it is for a sustainable kind of development sake, in which we don't have to only think about the human centric universe, but we have to also think about the world of plants and animals and other species. And for a very balanced ecology and for a sustainable development, these all species are equally important. But what was happening in fiction was another way of looking at this decentralization or deconstruction of humanity. So, this decentering and deconstructing of the human identity was also something that was leading to a post-humanist approach. And in literature, art, fiction, we see that all these forms are reflecting itself. So, a deconstructed human images, broken human images, or human images that are metamorphosed with animals or birds or bees, such kinds of images were being created. So a man who was more of a less than a man or more than a man. So man beast, man human, man and android, cyborgs, all these kind of developments were happening in the postmodern times. So when we look at the decentering and deconstructing of the human identity, we also see that there is a kind of scope in the speculative fiction that talks about human and machine hybridization. And so it was talking about the cyborgs. So the word cyborgs itself comes from cyber and organisms. So these were computer and organisms mixing in one another, and a new kind of being can be made out of this robotics and new technologies of development. So AI can play a very important role. Artificial intelligence can play a very important role in creating and manipulating human identity. Then, when we talk about beyond anthropocentrism, so what we have? So, man beast relationship, man animal relationship is also being seen. Then, from a point of view of genetics and or point of view of bioengineering or genetic modification or cloning, there also came new dimensions and ethical questions also arose from it. So bioengineering was being talked about, cloning was being talked about, and all. And then how, like when we were talking about never let me go, so what is never let me go discussing? That you can clone people, you can make people, but ethics comes that are you using those people? So will those people who are being cloned will have their own emotions? So if they are made for a specific or medical purposes, then they have their no choices of their own life. And this question of choices of our own life is a big question that comes up in postmodern and post-human times. That's why a lot of ethical dilemmas and of identity also came up. Like if it is a man and machine, then also there is a question of that, from where are we getting the memories? Are the memories of the machine, or an artificial memory of human beings being transferred for it? And many such movies and many such fictions were written to counter question that what world we are creating around us. So there was this ethical dilemma of identity, consciousness, that whose consciousness it is. It is a man's consciousness or an artificial intelligence's consciousness. And agency was also being questioned, that why they are being created, how they are being created, and how they are being used. And will they be a threat to us? A bigger question comes up, that can machine overtake the human world, and would they be a threat for this anthropocentric world? So when we talk about, again, we are talking about cyborgs and we are talking about superhumans, because there is this tendency in human beings to become Superman. And this is not something that I am saying, but Shaw has already said that man always in the process of evolution will try to become better than themselves. So in bettering this, they are trying to do it on themselves. So they are experimenting on their own memories, on their own capacity to use the human mind. And being exploring all these things, we are thinking about creating a new kind of organism which can do multitasking, which can, the limitations of human body can be done away with. But posthumanism also has philosophical questions attached to it. So it's basically philosophical, it is also cultural in its perspective, like how we are going to develop, how we are going to look at these new people. Will they be a threat to us, as it happens in Blade Runner, that they are fighting each other, or they will become a kind of help or support system for us? That is a futuristic question and speculative question. And that's why speculative fiction is coming on that values. So it is a human centered worldview, it is around humanism, but it is also talking about a post human worldview where human will not be the center of the thought process. So it explores what it means to be human in the age of advanced technology. So when there will be too many advanced technologies and people who will not have access to technology, some people, because there will be multinational companies, there will be corporations who will have more power over these technologies. So common people will not have this post-human approach, but the people with power and money will have more of the control over the world around us. So it is also talking about the ethics of artificial intelligence, because will it outrun or outdate human intelligence? Because we will be too much dependent on technology, too much dependent on artificial intelligence. So will it lead to a dwindling of human intelligence? So these questions are also coming up. And then what are the ethics of biotechnology? Man has created clones. So if animal clones have been made, human clones are not something that can be stopped from being made. So if you are making a clone, then the identity, what will be the identity of the clone? What will be the independent existence of the clone? Will the clone be used as a slave? So all these questions are also coming up with the postmodern times. So what we are doing with science and technology also makes us question our own choices. And then it is also about the cybernetics. The world of computer and the world of artificial intelligence has evolved multifolds. And till recently, it was a far-fetched thing. But now, with artificial intelligence becoming a part of our day-to-day lives, we are no longer away from this post-humanist world. And we have to think about how we are developing things, how we are incorporating technology in our day-to-day lives, or is technology controlling us, or do we have control over the technology? So all these questions of cybernetics are very important in the postmodern world. So, and the key concept that are included are the blurring of boundaries. So when we are talking about the blurring of boundaries, till now human were just human, and there was nothing more or less than being human. But now when we are looking at the humanity itself, we can be more or less than human. So what will it be? Will be a crossbreed between human and machine? Because if a fiction is created like her, when a man is falling in love with a machine, so will there be emotional development of machine? Because when we are talking about machine learning, and when we are talking about deep learning, machines are also kind of, can we give consciousness to machine? And if machine has its own consciousness, will it be considered alive or dead? Or will their values be a kind of questioning the ethics of man's values? So all these values, ethics become very important, and how we are perceiving it, how we are developing it, is becoming very important. So we are talking about nature and artificiality. So anything that is man made is artificial. So if we are creating artificial intelligence, naturally it is not something that is created by nature. So how much control do we have over it? Or do we actually have control over it? Or are we just breaking because nature has its own laws? So are we breaking the laws of nature by creating artificial intelligence? And will that lead to a world that is very bleak? And that's why most of the speculative fiction, you will find it is dystopia. Only some of the solar punk fiction is talking about a world which will be a better place, and which will have more life, and we are going towards a ecological kind of ecocentric world. But that ecocentric world is very far-fetched. The more real world that we are living in is more catastrophic. So the world of alien invasion, the world where we can have life on other planets, and in the world in which man and machine can be fighting each other, are appearing more real in the present times than a very utopic universe. So that's why this question of nature and artificiality will remain in the post-human, postmodern times. Then we are talking about transcending human limitations. Why we are relying excessively on technology? Because we feel that there is somehow a limit to human intelligence. Machines and computers can work faster than us, they can give more results in a less period of time. So that's why we want to enhance. Human beings are always, like, we are talking about the process of evolution. So the new evolution that is coming is more about the techno thinking. So people are thinking for technological solutions for all their problems. So postmodern times is mostly the times of techno thinking. So if we have any problem, we will find the solutions of the problem in technology. So we are actually, what we are trying to do by the development of science and technology, that we are trying to find that what can be our, ultimately what we can achieve through when we can go beyond human limitations. So we are actually trying to enhance ourselves, and we are merging with machines to enhance our brain capacity. So the images in the postmodern fiction or postmodern films that are talking about downloading or uploading memories or enhancing skills, and by uploading skills in human brain, wouldn't seem very far-fetched if we are able to bridge this gap between man and machine. And then we are talking about loss of human centrality. Basically, the loss of anthropocentrism is actually talking about that no longer the man is at the center of the universe. So we were talking about a world, when we were talking about the early ages before modernism, that was a theocentric universe. So basically God was at the center of the universe. Now with the shift of when realism came up, and modern man thought that, okay, with coming of Nietzsche and Heidegger, and with existential crisis all around, people started thinking about that, is God dead? So there was no God, or perhaps the bleak reality of the world around us made us realize that it is not a theocentric universe. So man thought that we are at the center, and we can create a world, better world. But with change of time, man also realized that we are also not at the center of the universe. So this deconstruction and this decentralization of man has also led to a kind of belief that we can have better humans by more bioengineering or machine man interventions. So that focusing on the post-human subject has become a part of the decentered human identity, and it has become a very important entity in post-human understanding. Then when we come to the body, so the body is customizable and irrelevant. In real life also, when we look at Stephen Hawking, he was unable to speak, but with the help of machines, he was able to communicate. So in that way, if we can create machines which can understand us, or which can, an artificial limb or a very developed machine can help us work faster, think faster, so that would even change our boundaries of body. So we will be beyond our bodies, and consciousness would matter more at that time. So the body will slowly become customizable, like other products. And this is again the effect of consumerism and commodification on the body. And then if such things happen, then the body itself will become very irrelevant. Then when we are talking about body, we are talking about mind also, because when we are talking about human identity, it is the mind and the body. So that dichotomy is there. But when body will become irrelevant, mind will become the more important space. So the memory and consciousness of the mind, if they are stored digitally, because this is also an ethical question that is coming up, that if we can store memory and consciousness, because what is death? The whole idea of death will be questioned, because people will try to preserve their memory and consciousness. And if memory and consciousness are preserved, then the whole idea of death will not be there. The logic of death will be over, because you will be preserving your memories, and everyone would try to preserve their memories and consciousness. And then there would be the rise of collective or non-individual identities, because with merging, we can, when you can transfer memories, when you can transfer consciousness from one mind to another, so there would be no single memory, or there would be no single consciousness. The next fictions that we will discuss, or the movies that we'll discuss, will talk about these things, that what would happen to a machine if you transfer a memory or consciousness to a machine. Will that machine become human? So these are the questions that are very pertinent. So these fiction are not just fiction, and these are not just stories, but these are all a dilemma, a moral dilemma and ethical dilemma that we are going to face in the coming times. So, like we can take the example of Ex Machina. So, in Ex Machina, what we are actually discussing is AI consciousness and ethics. So, if artificial intelligence has its own consciousness, then will they be thought alive? And if they're alive, then their life will have to be preserved, like human life. So, this is something that is questioning the whole ethics of artificial intelligence. Then, similar is Blade Runner and 2049. So in Blade Runner, we have discussed a bit about Blade Runner. So Blade Runner, in this, humanoids and humans are in direct conflict with each other. And there is this human policeman who is given this work of removing all the humanoids. And the most important character here comes to be Rachel, because who is Rachel? Rachel thinks that she is a human being, because she has been given the memory and consciousness of a human being, but actually she is a machine. And even the man who is in love with her doesn't realize that she is a machine, because she has pictures of her family that are also artificially created, and she also believes that she is human, so she has memories, she has consciousness. And when she is then how do you know the difference between man and machine? So the difference between man and machine is done through a set of questions. So that set of questions, for when the machines are answering, they would answer it machine like. But certain machines which were given memory and consciousness very much like human beings, they could answer the questions correctly, most like the human beings. So when it is coming into the light that Rachel is an artificial intelligence, and then a snake skin is found in her room, and people come to know that she's a hybrid of snake and human. So, but how she behaves and how she interacts, and her death also poses the question that what is the meaning of this. And then Corporation, Tyrell decides that which humanoid will live and which will die, and we all die. In that way, the humanoids are also programmed to die, and man would try to have some control over the humanoids. But in the humanoid Roy, when he tries to kill Tyrell, he shows that the world can also be altered by the machine universe if they have their own cognition and their own free will. So that consciousness that you are giving them, if you are giving them with some kind of free will, they can destroy the universe. So that's why so many works like Ghost in the Shell is being written, or Black Mirror is written. Black Mirror has several episodes, and in the several episodes, what it is actually going into is, it is delving into, is how machines, various kinds of technology, can affect the human universe. And then Ghost in the Shell is also about the cybernetic consciousness. So they can feel that they are being kept somewhere, and they can have their own thought process. And this thought process can be constructive, maybe, but mostly it is about deconstructive, and it is about the destructive capacity of machine, and that can be a threat to the whole human existence. When we talk about Black Mirror, we also talk about digital afterlife. So if we die, we can have our memory and consciousness saved in a digital form. And then it is also talking about our virtual selves. So if we can not go our own avatar, we can make through the virtual realities. So this is again very close to Baudrillard's whole concept of simulacra and simulation. So if we can create an alternate version of ourselves, so that virtual reality would be there. So, and we can also see this image of Patricia Piccini. It is about the young family. So when we are talking about art and literature and film, so in art also you will see this hybridization of forms. Then when we come to cyborgs and posthumanism, naturally we are talking about a very serious ethical and moral dilemma. So posthumanism in fiction, it helps us reflect on rapid technological change, and it challenges our assumptions about identity. So who are we? So we are our memory and consciousness, but if our memory and consciousness can be transferred so easily, so our whole idea of identity will come into question. And then we can transfer identity from one person to another. So we can make people forget things, we can make people amnesiac, or we can add extra memories and consciousness. So all these problems will stream up. Then we are talking about ethics, and we are talking about the future of humanity. So maybe when we are trying to techno think, we are trying to give solutions to the present day problems, but we may be creating unknowingly problems for ourselves. And then we are talking about a genre that imagines not just where we are going or who, but what we might become. So our whole change, it will be a whole change of personality of human being. Now also we see that people are glued a lot to their phones, mobile phones. So we can see that this change, this shift has started happening. So this too much dependence on technology is also somehow altering our worldview. So we are more trapped into this hyper real, surreal world of films and video games than the reality around us. And there are diseases also, cognitive diseases that are coming up when people are watching too much of video games or anime. So they imagine a world around them that is not real. So so again, we are asking that what makes someone human. These are the questions that are posed before us, that what makes us human, what makes us different from machine, and what is the basic essence. So this non-essentialism that we discussed in the early phases is what we are talking about when we are talking about that what makes someone human. And then we are talking about, can a machine have consciousness, can a machine be conscious? And then we are talking, is immortality ethical? Because we are programmed, or we are designed in a way, we are, as nature's law has, that we are mortals. But if we are saving our memory and consciousness, we are trying to become immortals. So is that immortality something that is good, or something that can be posing a threat to our own existence? So is it ethical? Because a lot of ethics is there with immortality. Then what happens to the world when humans are no longer central? Who will take over the world? That is again a big question. So when we are talking about the movies on postmodernism and posthumanism, we have The Matrix 1999, and it depicts a stimulated reality controlled by AI. So the human beings are actually being used as a power, because the world is a dystopic world. It has turned bleak, and the world is a very desolate place. And the human beings, but they are kept in a simulation where they believe that everything is fine. And this Neon, he goes and he works, sorry, Leo, he goes and he works, and he thinks that he is working in a cyber firm. So these kinds of simulated reality and controlled reality are part of such fiction. And as back in 1999, it seemed far-fetched, but in today's reality it can happen. So it is questioning the nature of existence, and who is God, and who has control over the universe. Then Her 2013. Her 2013 is also a very important movie because it centers on a man's relationship with an AI, with an artificial intelligence, and it is delving into emotional connections beyond the human. And it is also talking about that can a man be in love with an android or a robot. And then there is Annihilation 2018. So Annihilation is talking about a mysterious zone, and it is altering biology and it is challenging perceptions of self and other. So who we are, that comes into question when biology is changed. Then there is the Shrouds 2025, and it is a David Cronenberg's movie that examines grief and technology, and it uses speculative fiction as a genre to explore emotional realities of human beings. And then when we are discussing post-humanism and postmodernism, these are certain books that we have to go through. There is Linda Hutchin, A Poetics of Postmodernism, History, Theory, and Fiction. Then there is Lyotard, Jean-Francois, The Postmodern Condition. Then there is Frederick Jameson, Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism. And we have Roland Barthes, Image and Music Text. And then we have Brian McCall, Postmodernist Fiction, Terry Galton, The Illusions of Postmodernism, and The Anti-Aesthetic by Foster Hall. So all these works are very crucial to understanding what is postmodernism and postmodernism art and literature, how they are interlinked. And then when we are talking about the key authors and works and primary texts of postmodern fiction, there is Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, 1973, Don DeLillo's White Noise, 1985, Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, 1985. Then we have Kathy Acker, Blood and Guts in the High School, 1978. We have Janet Winterson, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, 1985. We have Italo Calvino's If One on a Winter's Night, A Traveler, 1979. And Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, 1981, which we have discussed at a great length. Then we have John Barth, Lost in the Funhouse, 1968, and Julian Barnes, Flauber's Parrot, 1984. So that's all for today. Thank you.